Ultimize. If you want to take control over your time more effectively, here's something you can do starting today. Pay attention to the first five inputs you consume every morning. Not just what you do, but what you see, hear, and react to in the first 10 minutes of your day. If the first thing you do is check your phone, you might see a message, then an email, then a news headline, then a social media post. Each of those inputs is shaping your thinking before you've made a single conscious decision. Most people believe their behavior comes from their intentions, but in reality, behavior is often driven by exposure. What you see repeatedly becomes what feels normal, and what feels normal becomes what you do automatically. If you check your phone every time you feel even a slight moment of boredom, your brain learns that boredom equals phone. You don't decide anymore, it just happens. For example, if every time you sit down to work, you open your email first, your brain learns that work equals email. So even when you intend to focus on something important, you still open your inbox without thinking. That's how programming works, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, repetitive way. Small inputs repeated over time shape behavior. The problem is that most of these inputs are not chosen by you. They're chosen by whatever is easiest to access. For example, your phone is always within reach, so it becomes the default. Your inbox is always open, so it becomes the starting point. Notifications are always appearing, so they become the trigger. And over time, these defaults become habits. You don't wake up and decide to waste time. You follow patterns that have been reinforced. For example, you sit down to work, and before you even think about it, you check your email. Then you click a link, maybe go to LinkedIn. Then you respond to something. Then you check something else. And before you know it, you're fully off track. Not because you made a bad decision, because you followed a familiar pattern. That's the key shift you need to make. Stop thinking of your behavior as a series of decisions. Start thinking of it as a series of conditioned responses. Because once you see it that way, you realize something important. If behavior is shaped by repeated exposure, then you can change behavior by changing what you're exposed to. For example, instead of starting your day with random inputs, you can start your day with intentional ones. You can remind yourself of your priorities before you look at anything else. Instead of letting your phone dictate your attention, you can decide when and how you interact with it. Instead of allowing distractions to constantly interrupt you, you can reduce their presence before they appear. Now, this is not about, let me be clear about this. This is not about eliminating technology. It's about controlling how it affects you. Because right now, if you're not actively choosing your inputs are choosing your behavior. And that leads to a day that feels scattered, reactive, and out of control. But when you start choosing your inputs, even in small ways, your behavior begins to shift. For example, if you begin your day by clearly stating your top priorities, your brain becomes anchored to those tasks. So when something tries to pull your attention away, there's a reference point. If you remove your phone from your immediate workplace, for example, you reduce the number of times you check it without thinking. I'm here at my desk right now in my studio. My cell phone is in another room. It's not in my studio. If you define your next action clearly before you begin, you reduce hesitation and start faster. These are not big dramatic changes, but they are powerful because they change what you're repeatedly exposed to. And repeated exposure is what creates automatic behavior. That is the goal. Not to force yourself to behave differently every moment of the day, but to create an environment where the right behavior becomes the default. Because when the default changes, everything changes. Your focus improves, your productivity increases, and your time starts being used in a way that actually reflects your priorities.